Hello, everyone. I am R.H. Gutierrez, MD, a professor and a Latino. And the reason I'm making this video, which is completely different than any video that I've made before, is because I see some dangerous parallels that some are actually mentioning, but most will not say where these parallels came from. I hope that if you disagree with some of the stuff I'm actually saying or disagree with how I present this, you will finish watching this, take notes, and tell me where I am wrong. Tell me, based on evidence that you have seen, why, what the parallels I see and I'm pointing out are not similar enough to scare you. I am going to tell you the parallel, what I'm using to parallel. In 1930, there was a Nazi who was actually killed, and the Nazi Party used his death to make him into a martyr, to get their group to pretty much be able to change laws, to be able to take over and eventually do stuff that's not what the normal person would have wanted to happen. I am going to use the timeline. I'm not going to use the 1930 this happened. It's rather what I'm going to say is day one, this happened. Day three, this happened. Day four, this happened. And I am going to put it with certain things that have already happened. Most of you know what I'm actually saying, know what events I'm actually pointing out. Now, I am not trying to attack or discredit the person who died or who was killed, or trying to make him look like anything else. In fact, you'll notice that I only mention the reactions of people, what they say, and that is intentional. I am not here to badmouth someone. I am just here to point out what the reactions are and the parallels, and that's it. So with that, I'm going to actually start with this timeline, and I will tell you, I made it using information from a Holocaust museum. I didn't use a left-wing uh, site that actually made something up or was discredited. I'm actually using what I found from a Holocaust museum again. So think about why I'm using that. Think about what I'm trying to tell you, and think about why these parallels are dangerous. So starting with day one is when the martyr dies. And what ended up happening is prominent members of a group was murdered. The killing is framed as a symbolic act of the left violence against those defending the nation. The assassination was immediately used to rally supporters highlight the growing threat posed by the left. Now, some people say, well, okay, that's anything. If someone dies, people are going, but the difference is if you watch the video of Trump talking about what happened before they even had a suspect, he was already saying the left was involved. The left is the only one that actually does violence. Remember, I I will actually use San Diego as some of the examples. The last planned mass shooting in San Diego was a synagogue by a right wing member, and it wasn't a liberal. It was a right wing person. And so the whole idea of, oh, no, no, only the left is violent, as was said, is propaganda that matches the first day of Wessler's killing. Now, when the propaganda begins, usually people will say day three, and that's when media outlets aligned with that movement start saying things about how heroic this person is and how they were a force against chaos and liberalism. The martyr's sacrifice is actually framed as a survival for the nation and the people of the nation, and how restoration of national pride is so important. The newspapers that are involved with that party publish stories and pamphlets emphasizing the idea that the fallen individual, the person who died, gave his life for the greater cause of nationalism. Now, again, listen to some of the stuff you've seen in Fox News or News Nation. This is war. They were saying this is war. Their liberals are coming after us. This actually, day 3, it's following a pattern. As we actually keep going on day 7, the heroic death narrative comes out. Now, what I mean by that is this. The movement leaders begin to refer to the martyr's death as an act of courage. They call it a sacrifice for the nation and frame it as a wake-up call for people to stand up against the left. Submersive statements highlight actually the threat of the left and often compare this accusation that the left are collaborating with internationals to take down the nation. The martyr is glorified and as a true hero and nationalist movements of the nationalist movements, and this is someone who actually embodies the virtues and discipline of self-sacrifice. If you actually listen to some of the stuff that's being said right now, what they actually said about Wessel and what they're saying about Kirk mirror each other and mirror each other too well. Look at clips of what Fox has actually said. I mean, these are things that are coming out. People point at it, but they don't tell you that it actually matches exactly what was happening in 1930. Okay, the next thing, in 2 weeks, there's a call for retaliation and order. The leaders of the party use the death to call for swift, violent action against left-wing organizations. Public speeches are pushed for greater government control over the streets, especially in areas that do have some political violence. Incidents of violence by paramilitary groups are framed as necessary to defend the national values and extract revenge for the killing, painting the paramilitary groups as protecting the national unity. We have seen this. We have seen these calls. We've seen these calls from the Secretary of, pretty much the Secretary of Justice, the Department of Justice. The FBI head has actually been saying this. If you go and Google these people, see what they're actually saying, and what we see is they're calling for retaliation. The U.S. government is going to crack down on everyone, and people who, quote unquote, celebrate his death should be fired, right? Now, I don't think anyone should celebrate anyone's death, but there is an aspect of free speech that we have always talked about in the nation. You're allowed to say anything you want as long as you do not bring violence. Now, if someone makes a dumb joke about someone else, it happens. If you think about it, when Pelosi's husband was attacked, people made jokes about it. And so what makes one different than the other? Ask yourself that. Now, by week 3, what ends up happening is there's prominent public statements made. Publications began to call for the creation of new laws to combat leftist activity. They suggest that this current state is too weak for the growing left-wing menace. You have heard the Department of Justice, the FBI heads actually saying the almost identical words. We have to protect the state. It is becoming a rallying cry for the GOP. And people are not paying attention to when these words came out, when they actually were said first. And yes, this was 1930s. We have to protect the state, right? From these left-wing lunatics. How many people have heard that? Direct words. By week 6, we have paramilitary groups' roles as big. The paramilitary groups are framed as a first line of defense against the left, and its role is celebrated in maintaining law and order. We already are seeing, even prior to this, how a paramilitary group, the ICE, Immigration, Custom and Enforcement, is being used against Latinos. The Supreme Court recently did a shadow docket where they said that if you speak Spanish, look Latino, are poor, or are just in the wrong area, you can be arrested without due process. We are seeing this play out exactly. So far, we haven't seen them go to universities and colleges and try to take out professors, but we have seen an attack on the academic system, just like we saw in 1930s. By week 8, if you think about it, we're moving quick on this. We are not on week 8 after Kirk's death, but this is how long it took the original making a martyr and using it to take complete control of the government. By week 8, there's a national day of mourning with speeches from the leaders reinforcing the martyr's sacrifice and greater good. Now, we will see this soon. Rallies are going to be held, and because they were held week 8 on week 8, uh, in the martyr's name, invoking him as a symbol of national identity, a symbol for a unified and strong nation. We've already heard these things. We've heard these words. We're actually moving faster than Nazis moved during Wessel. By week 12, laws and increased political control. Propaganda ramped up the efforts to push for stricter laws that would restrict left-wing parties from operating. We've heard President Trump say exactly that we're going to have laws that are going to restrict the left. Police and military powers are actually sent to deal with political things. Laws that would enable the arrest of suspects are actually passed, so you can get arrested for just being at the wrong place, the wrong time, for speaking something. We're seeing this start coming. One of the things that happens is becomes more control over public discourse. Again, you heard the Department of Justice and FBI say that they are going to crack down on all left-wing speech. They didn't try to hide that. They said it directly. Ask yourself, what is going on, and why are these parallels so close? By 1 year, you have the final push, the consolidation of power. Following a bunch of political and legal victories, we've seen the legal victories already happen. Again, the Supreme Court allows ICE to detain anyone if they look Hispanic, if they speak Spanish, if they're poor, if they work jobs that are typical of Latino. Yes, they actually already passed that. They already have that legal win, and they're going to get more. By year 3, you have the creation of the totalitarian state. Emergency powers are granted, and through the martyr's death is fully woven into the justification for a totalitarian state. We know that Trump has actually made comments that he wants to stay longer than this term. With an emergency power, he can actually potentially stop the next election. If the Republicans win the House and Senate again in November, he has full control of the Senate. We've seen that no Republican is willing to step up and say, hey, look, this is wrong. A lot of them ran saying that they were going to release the Epstein files. And yet they all protect those files from being released. And so one of the things that does happen is the propaganda actually continues to portray this martyr to create something that pretty much gets people to become blind and become disciples of the movement. They cannot see the patterns that are actually following. Now, some people will say this is, that it's not exactly like that. And I actually would tell you, step out from what you feel, from what your beliefs are, and look at it logically. Take this timeline and see if you can find where things are paralleled and how much faster we're seeing this administration move on these topics. I hope that things can return to something peaceful, to something where we understand that violence is not a way to do stuff. That stopping everyone from saying what they need to say is not the way to make us safer. And that we actually look at history, pay attention to it, look at the parallels, and at least question, if not, mention what's happening. Remember, the timeline I used to talk about was 1930s Wessel propaganda. And when you see that many parallels that everything that happened there is happening now, or is has happened before. You see a dangerous pattern. I hope if someone watches this and I hope that when people watch this, if they disagree with me, they are able to take evidence from anywhere in history, point it out, give me links to historic documents that actually tell me that no, this pattern is not the pattern that I'm seeing, the as almost identical, only faster, is not what's actually happening. I hope you can have a nice day and keep watch and alert. Remember, if you listen to some of the stuff that people who were in Germany after World War II, they tell you, well, they never thought things were going to go that bad. Do not allow yourself to be the person who, at the end of the day, realizes too late, I never thought that they were going to do this. I hope you have a nice day.